Linsky, and then we'll continue with our announcements.
Our Father in heaven, we're so grateful for this opportunity we have today to be in seminar and to be as a group of civil engineers. We're grateful for the opportunity we have to listen to a speaker today, to be enlightened with knowledge and to receive guidance and help us to where we should take our careers. We pray for safety and strength and endurance through our trials, and that we'll be able to overcome them and continue all their schoolwork and be the best people we can. We say this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Okay, so first things first, we have our open social tonight at 5:30. It's in the ED, and we'll be playing games, video games. So please, we have a sign-up list on the blog and on Facebook. If you guys are willing to bring a gaming console, like a Wii or an Xbox, or just want to play. There will be some snacks there as well. So come ready to play tonight, 5:30. And then we also have a Talbot Applied Engineering Futures workshop coming up on February 2nd. That's a Saturday. It will be from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. and lunch will be served. It will be here in the evening as well as in the school floor. This will be on the blog and the Facebook page as well, so go check those out. And then we have our CUP luncheon on February 21st. That's coming up as well. We really encourage you guys to go to these. It counts as an activity point or a networking point, I believe. So a great way to get your points in, and as well as meet other people who are in the field. And the speaker will be Tom Holm, I believe is how you say his name. Okay. Holmo?
Holmo.
It is? Okay, it's Holmo. Okay. And then, okay, we have our networking dinner. This is coming up real soon. It's right before the STEM fair. It's on February 6th from 5 to 8. And to be able to attend, you need to be a member of BYU ACE. It's free for students if you go. And I went to one last semester, and it's actually how I got my internship for the summer. So we really encourage you guys to go. It's great to get an internship. Do you know when they want our resumes by?
As soon as possible.
As soon as possible. Okay, and this will be on the blog and Facebook page as well, so make sure you guys sign up for this and go to these. They're awesome. Okay, and then the STEM fair is coming up as well the day after. It's on Thursday, February 7th, and we need volunteers for it. So there's a couple reasons why you should volunteer. It's a great opportunity to talk to recruiters. If you work with driving buses, for example, you can meet them and just talk to them there. And you can also get service points by working with or volunteering at the STEM fair. Another important part about volunteering at the STEM fair is that it gives us, it's fundraising for BYU ASCE, which means that we can plan more fun activities. We can go to Rocky Mountain Conference, which Shane will talk to us more about. But please volunteer for the STEM fair if you're able to. And then also, as officers, we were thinking about coming up or holding a t-shirt competition. We want to make a t-shirt for everyone, not just the polo, but also a t-shirt for ASCE. And we thought we can make a competition out of it. So if you have a slogan or a design that you think would be really cool, like the math department has their own t-shirts, right? I'm sure you guys have seen those with the pie on it. But we want to create our own t-shirts. So if you have a slogan, an idea, a design, submit it to one of the ASCE officers, and then we'll announce the winner here in seminar, and we'll make those t-shirts. And they should be around $3 to $5 per student, so not very expensive. And then Shane has some announcements for RMC.
Okay, so just a quick update on RMC. So again, for those who aren't familiar, this is a conference that we go to every year. This year's going to be April 4th to 7th at Boulder, University of Colorado Boulder. So the registration deadline for early registration event is January 28th. So if you are thinking about going, that's when you decide to go. They finally gave us the registration costs and everything. So because Steelbridge is now part of a different competition, if you're just going for a Concord Canoe or any of the other events, it's $65 for registration, and if you're going for Steelbridge and the rest of the conference, it's $75. So just be aware of that, and we're not sure exactly how much travel and hotel fees will be, but it's going to be about $120 total. If you've done stadium cleanup or other things like that, that was subsidized part of that fee. So if you are, if you know you're going to go, please register. I need all of this stuff before January 28th. So you have to fill out the sign-up sheet, fill out the risk and release form, and pay the online registration. All that information is on that link right there. I'm also going to send out an email to everyone, so if you don't write down the link, you can email it. Are there any questions?
So if we want to go and watch the Steelbridge competition, do we have to pay $75?
No.
Okay.
Yeah. Basically, the only reason why there's an extra $10 fee is there's a separate banquet for the Steelbridge, and then there's another banquet for the rest of the AC. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions?
How extensive is the banquet?
I don't know. Yeah, so there's going to be 2 banquets, one right after the other, and one is just for the Steelbridge competition, and then one. Okay.
For those travel dates also?
Yes, so we're going to be leaving Thursday morning, probably really early in the morning. That's the 4th, and then we'll come back. Oh, sorry, we're going to come back on the 8th. So that's the 7th. All right, thank you guys.
All right, next is I guess 2 Thursdays from now, the 31st of January. That's the week right before the career fair, which is also on a Thursday. There's going to be an internship workshop. It's going to be in room the 321 in the EB. That's just one of the classrooms with the sort of terrace desks. It's for anyone who has had experience in internship and for anyone who is serious about getting an internship this summer, even if it is your first year, and especially if it's your first year. We know that one of the most important skills we'll learn here with ASE is networking, and that's really the goal of this workshop. It's just going to be kind of one-on-one advice, talking to someone, getting tips for resume, for the career fair, etc. Don't feel like you don't have enough experience to help. I mean, anything is going to help. It's just going to be building relationships, talking to people who've had past internships. They might have suggestions based on what's interested in where you can apply. So just keep that on the radar. It'll be in 2 weeks. We'll announce that again next week for you.
What time?
I did not include that. 7 p.m.
Okay, and then real quick, we wanted to announce our winner from last week, the baby picture competition. It was Kat. Kat, where are you? I'm back here. Yes. And I'm going to invite Mason to come up and introduce our guest.
Keith Sturr is a land development leader at Avenue Consultants in Taylorsville. Graduated at BYU, combined bachelor's and master's in civil engineering with an emphasis in structural engineering in 2000. He said seminars have been going on since then, it's still strong. He studied composites and materials in his master's program with Dr. David Jensen. Practiced structural engineering and project management for 15 years in his home state of Wisconsin. And then he moved over in Iowa for a bit, before he returned to Utah to join Avenue Consultants to lead their private development group. Those do home improvement projects, enjoys camping, bakes killer bread in his spare time, and he's a great guy. So we're excited to hear from him today.
Okay, can everyone hear me? Well, thanks for having me. As Mason introduced me, it's been about 19 years since I left campus here, and I worked in Wisconsin and Iowa in the Midwest, and had a good experience suffering through winters and humid summers. And my wife and I had a chance to come back there to Utah 4 years ago, and we've loved it ever since. And as he mentioned, I studied civil engineering and did a master's with a structural emphasis. Any structural hopefuls here in the room? Yeah. Dr. Jensen will be excited to have you join his program. I really love the program. I did composite materials, and you know, life is an interesting journey, and I really haven't had a chance to use composite materials since I graduated as a material, but the concepts that I learned in that program I've used for all sorts of other things that I've done, so it's been exciting. So let me tell you a little bit about, see if this clicker works, or is it just a pointer? Here we go. Okay. So as a consultant, I'm not sure if anyone here has heard about it. Mason has heard about it because he's interning in our company right now. And we're in Taylorsville. Avenue Consultants started 12 years ago with 2 BYU graduates, David Thompson and Mel Bodley. I don't know if you remember David Thompson or not, but he was a structural student. Mel did traditional civil. And they started Avenue Consultants 12 years ago. When I joined them 4 years ago, I was employee number 14. We now have 47 employees. So we're definitely in growth mode. It feels kind of like a startup company. But I would say we're a younger group of people at our company, and it's been exciting to work there. We've expanded from just traffic engineering to all sorts of stuff that we're doing. We've got transportation and planning design, that's kind of our bread and butter. Traffic engineering, traffic studies, civil engineering, graphic storytelling, we will talk a little bit about that. Owners representation, planning, and then drone land surveying. Right now, to be considered legitimate in any civil engineering field, if you don't have a picture of a drone somewhere, you will not be considered legitimate. So we actually have a drone, we have like 4 of them, but it's on the map here. So one of the biggest things for Avenue Consultants is to bring innovation to the engineering world. And the very first innovative thing they did with traffic was called the continuous flow intersection, which anyone here have heard of the CFI? There's a lot in Salt Lake City. Big picture, Avenue Consultants was saying this is 2007, the economy's good, and then 2008 came and things kind of fell apart. The DOT didn't have money to build bridges on bigger highways, and Avenue said, hey, there's these CFI intersections down in Mexico. They're cheap to build, they move twice as many cars through the intersection, and then you can save money for 6 more years until you really need a bridge. And the rest is history. Like, that's kind of where we got our start, and we try and keep that innovative approach to everything we do in the company. It's been exciting for me to join them because the previous company I was with for 11 years, huge civil engineering firm in the Midwest. And it's kind of like a big old freight train on rails. If you want to try something new, you cannot get off the rails. They have a plan, you follow the plan. So this has really been exciting to be part of what they're doing there. So I want to talk a little bit about my philosophy that has changed the way we approach what we do as civil engineers at Avenue Consultants, and what I was doing before I came, and why this company has been kind of a big release of a lot of ideas and a lot of energy for us to work on. So I want to talk about this paradigm shift of the difference between leadership and management. And I'm just going to throw it out there. There's lots of ideas, there's philosophies on this, and I won't say that every answer is correct, but we'll talk about what we feel leadership is. But by raising hands or ideas out there, what is the difference between leadership and management? Has anyone thought about that before? Has anyone been a manager before at a job or anything like that? You have your hand up. What do you think the difference between leadership and management is?
Managers look at what's going on right now, and leaders kind of look more towards the future.
Yep. Looking at the future, yeah.
I think manager is someone who does everything themselves and tells people what to do all the time, where I think the leader allows others, like influences them to be able to be independent of the leader. So it's kind of like a give and take relationship.
Okay, yep. Empowering, yeah, what do you think?
Just an idea, but I would compare a leader versus a manager. A leader, you know, is kind of like a leading head of an organization versus a manager might not necessarily in direction himself.
Sure. Okay. Giving direction versus being at the head.
I think of a leader more as like a people person, while a manager is very task oriented.
Okay, that's usually the case. There are some people that break the rules on that. Any other ideas before we keep moving here? Okay. So the big thing that I had like this light go off in my head. I read a book about 10 years ago that was talking about this difference, the difference between leadership and management. And the company I was working at actually like promoted this book within the company. Unfortunately, we weren't necessarily applying what the book was saying in the company. So we had great ideas, but we weren't really applying it. And the paradigm shift is that the difference between leadership and management is a manager tries to control a process to a set order. Like if you're manufacturing donuts, you are going to say, this is exactly how we make donuts, this is how many we're going to make each day, and then you're going to do it. And the people making the donuts, you're going to make sure they do it exactly as it's prescribed in your manual or whatever that is. So a manager is trying to manage to a specific form, specific outcomes, whereas with a leader, being a great leader is just the opposite. You're changing everything. And the ability to change something and to do it successfully is not easy. So we'll talk a little bit about that too. So big picture, I read this book and had this aha moment that I've been doing this wrong all the while. I really wanted to be a great project manager, and I thought, well, I just need to focus on all the little tasks that have to be done, and you trudge through it, and if your report card at the end of the project looks good, then you did a great job. Whereas from that moment on, we started challenging what the checklist was, and saying, why are we doing it this way? What can we change to make it different? And try and figure out if that's for the better or for the worse. So the book is called Leading Change, John P. Cotter. If anyone here has time to read outside of what you're studying, it's a great book. I recommend it. I wish I had read it in college. It just took me 10 years to find it. So one of the better quotes is that management makes a system work. It helps you do what you know how to do. Leadership builds systems or transforms old ones. So civil engineering is an old industry. It's been going on forever. There's lots of room for change. So real quick, and sorry for the fuzzy graphic here, the most high definition one I could find on the internet yesterday. So John Cotter has this formula for changing things. And from a business standpoint, this works. We've experimented with it, we've tried it, and then if you compare all the other things that you see in the news or that people are trying to change things. I'm not going to get into politics or government, but if you compare what's happening in government to this formula, they're not doing this. And maybe that's part of why it's not working and things aren't changing very quickly. The big picture, the focus of this formula is, number one, create a sense of urgency. So if people don't feel like there's a need to change, it's not going to change. And I've been through that in my career so far. We've been through it with clients. We've been through it with getting through city codes. But even just the way we're doing business at Avenue Consultants, we basically thrive on this sense of urgency to change and to change the industry we're in, and how do we make opportunity for us as a company and bring value to our clients and the cities we work for and the state governments that we work for. The second one is to build a guiding coalition. You need teammates. You need people to think that your idea is probably worth pursuing. And part of that isn't just like forcing people to do it. Like you have to like use the process of convincing them that there's a need for change, and then showing them how you want to do it, and then getting some buy-in from them. So that's, again, that's part of that gridlock that happens when you're trying to change things and it's not working. It's usually step number 2. You don't, no one's convinced that your change needs to happen and that it's not going to work. The third one is to form a strategic vision and initiatives. So basically, this is your playbook. This is how we're going to implement this change. If you're just doing stuff on the fly, if there's a company that's trying to change what they're doing, or if you're making donuts and you just say, hey, we need to do some better donuts, you have to have a plan in place in order to do it. You can't just start changing things and hope for it to work. The fourth one is to enlist a volunteer army. And we kind of joke around about that at work, but big picture, sometimes we're not going to get paid to change the things that we want to change, especially in business. Like, sometimes changing is expensive, like really expensive. For example, you may have heard that the UTA in Salt Lake City wanted to change their name last year. And so again, they're kind of going through this process, and they start doing the math, and they realize what the cost is just to change their name, and it was like $50 or $52 million to change their name because their name is everywhere, and they have to go change it everywhere. So with the type of dynamic change that this is talking about, you need this volunteer army. You need people who are willing to promote this change, maybe not getting paid for it, or maybe not getting an immediate result or benefit from it. So the next one is to enable action by removing barriers. So if you've got people who are saying, I think you should stick to the same donuts. Our donuts are great. Stop trying to change our donuts. You have to go out there on the front lines and talk to them and say, here's why we need to change. And in the civil engineering world, it's the same way. So if we're designing bridges the exact same way we've designed them for 30 years, and there's people who have been sitting in some sort of government seat or jurisdictional seat who is saying, let's not change them, let's keep these bridges the same way, I don't want to have to think differently until I retire. Those are some of the people that you have to go and convince. So when Avenue brought these innovative intersections to the Salt Lake area, there was a lot of naysayers. A lot of people still today go through a CFI and they turn left the block before the intersection and they're just thinking, who are these engineers that came up with this? This is a terrible idea. Once all of that works, I mean, we've got the data to support why they work. You just have to convey that message. And we'll talk a little bit about that later when we look at some project work that we do. We also, once we kind of satisfied the CFI group, then we introduced the through turn and it made everyone even more angry. But we can talk about that later. So the next one is to generate short-term wins. So you have to have this feeling of success in order to keep the motivation and the momentum going forward when you're creating some sort of institutional change. And basically, you just want people to feel like they're making progress. And if that progress doesn't happen, or if people don't feel like they're making progress, they're likely to like sign off of your volunteer army. And they'll say, I've had enough. We've been trying to change this for 3 years, and I'm just out of steam. And we just don't want to support this change initiative anymore. The biggest part of that is to demonstrate them and to point them out. So the very first CFI intersection that went in, all the naysayers and people who were confused, and part of that short-term win was to say, waiting times at this intersection have gone down. Here's the data. The number of accidents at this intersection have gone down. Here's the data. And when you distribute that to the people who are potentially opposing your change, it's very powerful information to keep that change moving. To the point where eventually they put these CFIs down the entire length of Bangerter Highway. So the next one is to sustain acceleration. Just keep pushing as you're having those short-term wins. Constantly reviewing, what are we doing? Are we making the right change? Should we be adjusting our approach? The last one is to institute change. And by institute, I mean this change is now the common practice. It's not considered as change anymore. And sometimes that takes a year, sometimes it takes 10 years. There's things that are still considered experimental in civil engineering. And I don't know if they'll ever be considered institutional, but that's kind of the last step. So here's the question, why change the system? We've been doing this a long time. Civil engineering has been around forever. A lot of the things that you guys are learning right now, it's the same principles that I learned when I was here. It's the same principles that were established 50, 100 years ago. So we've been in engineering for thousands of years, changing the landscapes. And that's one of the biggest, coolest things about civil engineering, is changing landscapes in the world that we live in. And changing nations. So I don't know if anyone recognizes this picture. It's the only one I could find, but this is when the railroad connected in Salt Lake City. This completely changed the way the United States worked. The only thing that's consistent with the evolution is change. We are constantly changing. So why change the system? Because it wants to be changed. And as civil engineers, or any type of an engineer, it's like one of the most crucial parts of that change is to have people who are bright, intuitive, and inventive in bringing these ideas to our industry. And rather than, I mean, I'll just say this, at your very first job out of school, rather than taking a seat at a computer and saying, okay, show me what to do, that's fine, but feel free to kind of give some of these ideas and say, well, maybe we could be doing it this way. Or maybe you found on your own personal research time, you found something different to do. And if you're interning at a company and they're listening to your ideas, and maybe they don't implement all of your ideas, but they're listening to them, that's a good sign. If they're not listening to them, and they say, well, here's our resource manual. This is exactly how we want you to draft this in CAD, or this is how we want you to do these calculations. And your ideas are kind of getting blocked and there's blinders on, maybe that's not the right environment for you if this is the kind of person that you want to be. And then lastly, great changes require great leaders, and this is what we strive to do at Avenue Consultants. I'm really excited to be part of what they're doing right now. It is hard work. It kind of feels like a startup company every day. Mason's been interning for how many months now? 9 months. We've done a lot of stuff. Like we moved offices, and Mason has been a huge help because there's a lot of days when we say, can you install whiteboards instead of doing these calculations for us? He's just been a good sport doing that for us. So let's talk about some of the things that we're doing to change the industry that we work in. One of the things that I showed you is called owner's representation. From a civil engineering standpoint, this is very different in Salt Lake City. I was doing some of this back east, but to bring it here and implement it here in Salt Lake City, it's new. We've got some people that love it and other people that don't love it. Big picture, as the civil engineer, we are the owner's representative for someone who wants to develop a piece of property or build a building. Because let's face it, most people that own property and they want to build a building, they've probably not been a professional engineer or a contractor or something like that before in their life. So we close that gap and we say, we will be your representative. We will help you decide what you want to build, how much you want your budget to be, what your schedule is, and we will enforce the heck out of that. The alternative to the rest of the free world is that you have either developers or architects doing this. We tried to change that arrangement back east, and it worked. And really one of the biggest sells was, if you have a schedule and a budget and spreadsheets, who would you rather manage that? And this is no disrespect to architects. There's great ones out there and I love working with them. But do you want an engineer-minded person managing your data? and your budgets? Or do you want an architect who maybe is more artistic, and they have artistic visions, and they want to maybe build the building the way they want it, rather than the way the owner wants it? So again, no disrespect to architects, we work with them day in, day out, but we've made this change to who's managing what, and it's made a huge change. The other thing we're doing is we will do this service with no equity investment in the property, which that's pretty common. Like if you have a developer that says, I'm going to help you build a building, I want 10% of your building. When you're getting your lease payments, I want 10% of that. And that's their cost for helping you build a building. Whereas we're saying, no, we're just engineers, we're not investors. And it's just been really exciting. So one of those buildings we did is the building that we just moved into in Taylorsville. And we did the exact same thing. We solicited the architects and the engineers. We did position ourselves to do the civil engineering, which worked out well. And then we bid out the construction to multiple contractors, and we managed that process. And despite the last 2 years being very volatile in the construction market and increasing costs and lack of labor, we were able to get the building done with a 2-month delay, which compared to everything else that's going on around us, they're in like the 6 to 8 month delay world. And then we kept the budget to a point that when we tell people what we built this building for, we're seeing their jaws drop and say, how did you build that building for that much money? And it all came down to just managing it, being like very cost conscious in what we did, and then paying attention to detail. So another project that we did, this exact same method, Park and Jet. If you guys ever go to the airport, there's a new parking lot where you can park, you pay there. Not the most exciting project in the world, right? I mean, it's not a 20-story building in downtown Salt Lake, but it's 11 acres of parking, which is kind of unprecedented in Salt Lake City. One, because the city owns the airport, they don't like competition, so they don't do these projects very often. And number two, it was like one of the largest paving projects besides the airport in Utah the year it was built. It was built last year. The big thing about this, we did the exact same thing. We managed the design and the construction of that project, and we, again, we're engineers, we're engineer-minded, tracking everything. The money we saved on this project, because we caught errors that the contractor had made, we caught mathematical errors in their invoices. The money we saved on that project was like 6 times what they paid us to manage their project. So we basically made it so that what we're doing is kind of a free service, or if anything, you're saving money by having someone manage it for you. One example on this, and Mason, you may have heard us talking about this, but they decided to add a bunch of additional security measures, a bunch of underground conduit. We saw that there was an error in their change order, which was basically a decimal point. So instead of 50 cents a foot for underground conduit, it was $5 a foot. And the electrician submitted that, and no one caught it. It went to the general contractor. He didn't catch it. It went to the owner to review, and of course they send it to us and say, okay, review this. The owner didn't catch it, and then of course we go through and we catch this error. It ended up being a $35,000 error. And you start asking, like, well, did they do this on purpose? Was it really an accident? But I'm telling you, like, here in the Salt Lake market, this is very common. Like, it's either because people are being careless about the way they're doing their business, or people are trying to take advantage of people who are building a project that don't know what they're doing. So on this project, we saved, in the end, about $50,000 on bogus invoices, and then we also saved like $125,000 by redesigning their site detention for the drainage based on what the city wanted versus what we know how to do. Because the city wanted this kind of old, intuitive drainage calculation done on the site. And we said, no, we're going to do hydraulic modeling. We're going to do inflow and outflow hydrographs. We're going to engineer this. We're not just going to spreadsheet this. And we were able to reduce the size of the detention chambers by about 20%, which, because this is such a big project, ended up being about $125,000. When they installed this, the underground detention in 11 acres of parking, it was the largest underground detention project in Utah that year. And so it was kind of fun to be part of that. And the savings were there, and that client will recommend this to anyone for life. Like, we took care of them, and again, this is not common practice. Like, not a lot of other engineering firms are doing this in Salt Lake City. So another thing that we're doing to kind of change the industry of engineering is trying to take a new approach to data management. There's so much information out there. How can we be collecting this information and helping our clients to take advantage of that? So one example is we have a lot of GIS capabilities in our company. I don't know if anyone here has dabbled in GIS, but basically it's a visual database system. And we took the entire county of Salt Lake County, Utah County, Davis County, every single parcel in all 3 counties, put them in our database. We found every piece of public available information, put it in the database, and then we created a visual search engine on it. So you can go into this database and say, I want to be in this city, I need 5 to 10 acres for development, I want it to be zoned agriculture, meaning it hasn't been zoned before, it hasn't been built on, and I want to see who the neighbors are. And so you put all of this criteria in there, and visually it spits out a map, it shows you all the parcels, it highlights it, and then we just create a hyperlink to this data, we send it to our clients, and then they can continue their search and move on the way. So we're basically taking one step into the seat of our clients and saying, we'll help you create these opportunities instead of sitting back and waiting for you to call us on the phone and hire us to do the engineering oversight, which has also been exciting. Another thing that we did, probably hard to tell what we're doing here, but we just did this about 3 weeks ago. We had a client call us up and said, I want to develop 10 acres in a city in northern Utah, but the city has restrictions. You cannot develop anything that's beyond the 30% grade in the city. He said, can you guys make a map for me? We said, sure. Go to our GIS department. They put in all the criteria. They were able to find all of the contours available online for free, and it basically spits out an image. And this is kind of a sample of what it looked like. Anything that's green, you can develop on it. Anything that's red, you can't develop on it. They have never seen anything like this, and this is one of the biggest developers in Utah right now. And of course, the next question was, can you do this for the entire state? And yes, we can, but we'll have to charge a lot more money for that. But again, just using very available data and very available software and some bright GIS technicians to be able to put this type of information together is very valuable. And then the last one that I want to show you is these visualizations. So communicating as an engineer for the last 100, 200 years has been black and white, 2-dimensional drawings. And it's been changing. They came out with color plotters about 15 years ago, and everyone was like, yes, let's put color on our 2-dimensional drawings. And we're saying, no, we're going to change that. Everything is going to be in 3D. We're going to be, like, every project we do goes in Google Earth, and our clients can review it all the way, like through basically going in Google Earth and seeing it. The drones help us do that, so we're using drones. And then part of what we do too is, what's better than a 3-dimensional picture with color is a movie. So Avenue Consultants has a movie department. We have a film producer who also works part-time here at BYU. He does commercials for other private companies, but we also create videos to help our clients understand the project and to help the people who are opposed to our projects understand why we're doing them and how it benefits them. I've got a short video that I want to show you that we did. I don't know if it'll work. If it doesn't, I'll just open it manually. But in St. George, Utah, is a very congested intersection. We came up with a solution to completely redo the traffic. I know there's going to be a lot of congestion during construction, but when it's done, it's going to be pretty slick. Let me see if this will play.
From its beginning, the St. George area has been renowned for its skyline of red rock bluffs and mesas. The layout of neighborhoods and roads have adapted to this unique landscape. West Black Ridge, a prominent bluff in the area, creates a natural boundary between the east and west sides of the community. Bluff Street moves drivers along this massive landmark to other roads. As the community grows on both sides of the ridge, more and more stress is placed on Bluff Street, leading to long lines of cars turning onto Bluff Street from St. George Boulevard, and even more cars waiting to turn off of Bluff Street onto Sunset Boulevard. To prepare for future growth, UDOT and the City of St. George have designed a safer, more efficient Bluff Street along West Black Ridge. Here's what's happening. First, rather than waiting at a stoplight, drivers on St. George Boulevard will have a free right turn lane that gets them directly onto Bluff Street without any lights, speeding up the flow of traffic. Second, UDOT will widen Bluff Street along West Black Ridge, adding extra lanes for vehicles and creating more space for bicycles. On the north end of the ridge, Bluff Street intersects with Sunset Boulevard, a crowded intersection. Currently, this intersection directs the flow of traffic to the north. Left-turning cars have to wait for the green arrow to get onto Sunset Boulevard, creating long lines of vehicles in the left-hand turn lane. UDOT's improved design will direct the flow of traffic to the west, where it turns into Sunset Boulevard. This means instead of waiting in the left-hand turn lane, you simply follow the main flow of traffic around the ridge. Only vehicles in the outside lane will continue north on Bluff Street. While making these improvements, UDOT will add a pedestrian tunnel at Bluff Street and Sunset Boulevard where people can cross safely. Computer models predict that these simple enhancements will improve the commute along Bluff Street for decades to come. UDOT, keeping Utah moving.
So it's a little bit different than a black and white two-dimensional drawing. And I don't know if you caught a sense, but just through these videos, we can show people, hey, this is the traffic you're dealing with, and give them kind of that claustrophobic feeling of sitting in a left turn lane for 3 or 4 light cycles trying to get to an intersection. And we've done very similar videos on dozens of different intersections to try and demonstrate, here's the math of why these work, here's the results of when they do work, and then kind of this 3D visualization to help people understand there's benefit at the end of this project. It's going to be disruptive for about 2 years for the people that live in this community, but helping them understand the end goal. Again, we're trying to get those people to join this change that we're trying to make to their community. It's a lot of fun. The voice, you may recognize it. He does commercials for BYU also, so anytime I'm watching TV and I hear his voice, I'm like, oh, he's doing another commercial. But it's just a lot of fun to work with people like that and to be able to bring kind of this new technology, a new way to present our story and why we're doing these projects. And really, we're just trying to change a lot of what the industry is doing. And we felt some of that success growing from, a company of 2 people to a company of 47 people. It's not easy, but it's exciting and it's fun to be part of. So, I don't know if I have. Oh yeah, that's the end. So that's kind of an idea of what we're doing right now. And big picture, if people are kind of closing you in and you have great ideas, go and find that coalition. Find your volunteer army. Try and find ways to change what you're doing and find positive changes. There are so many aspects of the world that I'd love to apply this to. I just don't have enough time. But for those that are members of the church, there's been a lot of changes going on lately as well. And I've actually kind of looked at this circle of the process of change, and a lot of those elements are there. And we're using some of this to help implement those changes in the ward that I'm in and talking to other people that I know that are coming to the same challenge of making those changes as well. So it's exciting stuff. That's all I have. I wanted to open it up for questions though, if you guys have questions or...
Have you ever done any of the consulting work for an electrical company or just going managing that out, like really showing
Yep. Yeah, in fact, so the question was, do we do any of this for electrical? And the answer is yes. So anything that is either civil engineering or building related, infrastructure, even to the point of like big utility projects with Rocky Mountain Power, as a company, even if we're not involved from the beginning, we'll come in and we'll help kind of review what they're doing. Is this the best thing to be doing? One of our top partners in the company, Andrew Gemperline, he's been in the industry for a really long time. He was the project manager that handled all of the transportation and logistics during the Olympics. And he's just kind of been building his resume ever since. So one thing he's doing, he's up in Farmington right now. There's a new type of project delivery. So the way they design the project and the way they build the project for the highway, it's brand new. And so he's actually there, sitting in their job trailer, watching what they do. And he's looking to see, is there a better way that we could be doing this? Or is this, is this efficient? Is it not efficient? Are people communicating? So in a way, it's nice to be in that position too, where even though we're not building it, we can help be part of the solution and make it as efficient as we can. So, any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question for you. You mentioned that Avenue is expanding pretty rapidly. Do you see Avenue creating more offices? And if so, how do you feel like that will affect the change that you affect in Utah and in other places?
Yep, that's a good question. We are currently in negotiations for pre-lease for an office here in Utah County. It'll probably be in Orem. Part of that is because there's a handful of people that we want to hire desperately, and they don't want to commute to Salt Lake City. I cannot blame them for that. So we should have our Orem office open this year. I'm not sure if it'll be this summer or this fall, but strategically we want to be here in Utah County. One of the biggest reasons is because last year, permits for new construction in Utah County outpaced Salt Lake County for the first time. And we don't see that change going away. Like, we want to reposition ourselves to be where the growth is. Salt Lake is kind of running out of space, and politically, it's becoming a little gridlocked to do big development. So we're also doing work in other states. We do work in Nevada, Texas, doing some of the videos for Texas. And we'll go anywhere our clients are, but strategically, we're really focused on Utah right now to do that work. So, question.
Do you do consultant work for other engineering firms?
We partner with other engineering firms strategically. There's oftentimes when it's better if a different consultant were to lead a project because they're more skilled. But if we have some services that they would benefit from and they feel it's a good partnership, we'll go together and go after the project. A lot of our work is bid, like work that you have to put in a proposal and then interview and then select the right consultant. So we're very strategic about who we're partnering with. Plenty of companies that we partner with that we always compete with, but we just have good relationships and we'll say, hey, we're going to partner on this one, we're going to compete with you on the other one, and if you're okay with that, let's keep working together. So. Any other questions? Okay. Well, thanks for having me. It's nostalgic to come back. Some things changed, so we're still in 377 of the Applied Engineering Building. So, thanks, and good luck with your night.
So we have our